Our next presenter is Professor Young Kim. Young is the Associate Head for Research in the Biomedical Engineering Department here at Purdue. Young, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the kind invitation. I'm going to talk about a little bit different topic. Maybe it's kind of new to you, but I think you can guess from this title. So the title of talk here is Counterfeit Medicines Are Fundamental Security Problem. You'll see a lot of kind of common issues for many other security issues. So my name is Young Kim from Biomedical Engineering. So just to give you a kind of perspective about this talk, I just have one slide of what I'm doing in the lab. Actually, we're doing some light matter interactions, in particular biological tissue. So we are using some of the natural materials, such as the silk. And also another project we are doing actively here in the lab is some mHealth, mobile health, and telemedicine, and here the anti-counterfeit technologies. And actually, I'm trying to combine these so that hybridization of digital properties and material properties, and also I'm doing some, I'm not a CS guy and an engineer, and we know how to do some modelings, and we know the kind of physics behind. So idea is that let's incorporate some of our knowledge into deep learning so that we can avoid some of the limitations that just the purely data-driven approaches. So that's what I'm doing. So we'll see some combinations. So let's talk about the main topic. As you know, the problem of counterfeit medicine is not new. It's becoming a tremendous burden in our society. As you know, the medicines and pharmaceutical products are most vulnerable goods. For example, it's related to patient safety, public health, economic loss, and also intellectual property infringement. So covers many different issues in our society. So let's have some definitions. Actually, there are many different categories, so it's confusing. The first one is a substandard. As you can guess, it does not meet the quality of measurement. And then falsified. Sometimes it looks real, but actually contains some toxic materials inside. And then the drug diversion is another big issue. It's legal, but kind of used in an illegal manner. It's a big issue sometimes. And WHO defined counterfeit medicine in this way, deliberately and fraudulently mislabeled with respect to identity and or source. It's kind of broad definition. So in this talk, I'm going to use this broad definition of counterfeit medicines, kind of following the WHO's definition. So let me share some problems. This is a snapshot. You'll be surprised to see this. Actually, counterfeit medicine for malaria and pneumonia treatment, in particular in Africa, actually caused 250,000 children deaths each year. It's quite a surprising fact. This is one statistic from Hong Kong. Actually, 40% of Viagra sales counterfeit. And some incident in Singapore. And actually in the US, we have this opioid crisis, and it's kind of partially due to the counterfeit medicine. Actually, you can find a counterfeit opioid easily from online. So these are some of the examples. And another big example is the issue is the online or internet pharmacies. So let me ask you a question. So let's say if you just have an access to internet, if you search just to buy something from online pharmacies, do you know how many online pharmacies out there in the world? Just guess. Thousands, right? Definitely. The answer is, if you just have access now, I think roughly you can find 40,000 online pharmacies worldwide. And some statistics say actually every month we have 600 new pharmacies, and they're in and out all the time, as you can see. Next question. Then how many of them are operating legally? Just guess, like percentage. Yes.
Maybe like 1% or
1%. I think you're generous. Actually, you're not generous. I'm sorry. So the statistics said it's only from 3 to 4% actually operating legally. So as you can see, the issue. This is some statistics. Actually, 12% more than the illegal online pharmacies. Actually, they sell controlled substances without any prescription in the U.S. And actually, that really contributed the opioid endemic, even among high school and college students here in the U.S. And as you can see, this ongoing pandemic of COVID-19 has boosted the use of all kind of online shoppings, including online pharmacies. So as you can see, we will expect to see a lot more of this the counterfeit medicines from online or internet pharmacies. And let's talk about a little bit about regulatory landscape. Definitely FDA is doing something. So this is the FDA's Drug Supply Chain Security Act. Basically, the manufacturers, pharmaceutical manufacturers, wholesalers, and pharmacies, clinics, they need to actually have some level of unit level tracing by 2023, basically next year. So it was enacted 2013. As you can see, it took basically 10 years to get to this point. And I got to learn very intriguing lesson actually from pharmaceutical companies. Do you know their strategy to meet this requirement? They have a really simple solution. Just pay fines. That's it. And that's their approach because it's not a big deal for them, given that their revenue is big and etc. So I heard that the biggest strategy is, let's find the fine, pay the fine. So, but the good thing is they're doing something to meet this requirement. You may have heard about this. It's called the Med Ledger. So major pharmaceutical companies and distributors, including Amazon and I think the Walmart as well. So they created this a blockchain-based solution just to have some meet the requirement by FDA for the pharmaceutical supply chain. So I don't know, some people like blockchain and some people really hate them. So I don't know it's good or bad, but I think they're getting some attention in this domain. So some of the current technologies out there is based on package level technologies. As you can see, we have some barcode and a QR code. And sometimes we use the radio frequency ID, RFID. So it's more like a package level, box level, right? And we do have some advanced technologies out there. They're using some different polymers and DNA and some gold, the metal materials, and etc. I think the thing is you'll see a lot of publications, papers in China, in some East Asia, but we don't see much of the activity in the U.S. And also, I did a little bit of a kind of search homework and see. So we really want to do on-dose authentication. That means I'll have another slide about on-dose authentication. Is that you really want to have security measures on the pill, not on the box, so that we have a more protection. Actually, the security level is higher. So these are some of the technologies and companies for on-dose technologies. But as you'll see that sometimes requires a very specialized readers. So we cannot just patients or the end users, customers don't have the access to do it. And it's actually a really good market. It's based on these the market research. Actually, it's even they're talking about $1 billion kind of market because we'll see more of counterfeit medicines. Actually, I have a dog, and my wife orders some heartworm medicine through the internet because it's a lot cheaper. But I have no idea whether this is really genuine and trustworthy, or just they have the same package, so that we have no idea. So let's talk about some on-dose and in-dose applications. Basically, again, we want to achieve a dose level authentication, not from the package level authentication. So the problem is oftentimes the medicines are separated from the original package and then placed into individual dose. Actually, this is a common practice in hospital pharmacies. They receive bulk and they don't keep them as a bulk, and then they just put a tiny, tiny boxes and they put individual pills. And depends on the dose unit, actually they have another packaging, etc. That's for, they really want to minimize this dispensing errors and also the management and etc. And as you know, secondary packaging, just the box is highly vulnerable. It's very easy to copy if you just have a good scanner and have some technologies. It's quite straightforward to copy exact box. And also some of technologies, some analytical chemistry-based one in particular, requires trained personnel, and also we need to have very sophisticated analyzers and readers and etc. So the bottom line is that those things are not really designed for patients, such as me. So I don't have any access to those. And I think in order to really fight against counterfeit medicine, patients have to play a role. So that's the kind of whole motivation for research. And in that case, we need to identify safe, edible materials so that we can encode some information in there. And some of the commonly used materials not ideal for oral intake because usually use the synthetic materials and artificial additives. And we saw that actually they can have some adverse effect. And one of the examples is actually this one is phthalate. It's a really common kind of material, coating material for pharmacies. But actually there's some studies showing that they really change our hormone production. So there's some issues about endocrine disruption using this. So there's should be some caution if you use some synthetic artificial additives. So in terms of material, so this is what we identified. Actually, we use silk proteins and fluorescence proteins. We are just use all proteins. We don't use any artificial materials. And silk, as you know, it's from silk cocoons. It's a typical material for textile, but actually it's edible. It's all protein. Even FDA allow us to eat silk proteins. It's just protein. If after you get some exercise, if you need some protein intake, actually you can eat silk. And also we use fluorescence proteins. It's fluorescent proteins that generate some fluorescence signals. Again, it's all proteins. We don't use any artificial or synthetic materials. And the nice thing about this is that we can dissolve into some solutions, as you can see, and then we can make rigid or flexible. We can make many different types of structures. It's basically biopolymer. And we can tune mechanical or optical properties in etc. So we decided to use silk and silk proteins and fluorescence proteins to encode some of the information. So this is the overall approach. Definitely we need to develop some kind of the tags that can be attached to your individual medicine. And then idea is that we want to generate some keys or encode some information. And then we have to have some database to store. Or if you have an algorithm, I know sometimes we don't want to have a centralized database. And then another idea is then if we can have some algorithm, then we can encode some information. And then patient, actually, ideally, if they can use their smartphone and then authenticate. So then they don't need to remove the tag from the pill because, again, it's all edible. And so they can just take it. So that's the idea. Then I think we have a tool we can empower, actually, patients to play a role in this case. So I'm going to share some of studies and technologies in the lab. We have a few others in the lab, but I just decided to share like 3 different technologies. The first one is edible, physical, unclonable functions. I think if you're in CS, I think you heard about physically unclonable functions, like puff, right? And we sort of mimic the idea of puff to make this. And then another one is edible cyberphysical watermarking, combination of just the physical watermarking and digital watermarking together. And then another one is the simple idea, we can make some edible QR code. It's very similar to just the conventional QR code, but based on all edible materials, so it can eat it. So I'll just share each technologies. So the first one, some background. I think you guys know this better than me, physically unclonable functions, PUF. So this is the really rough idea from an engineering perspective. Developed originally in computer science. It's more like algorithm. And sometimes it's called one-way function. So this is more like a digital fingerprint. And the nice thing is we have a really good large number of pairs of challenge inputs and then response outputs. So you want to actually have many pairs of challenge and responses so that we can have a large parameter space. So you just don't want to use one time. You want to do multiple times so that you can have a really the high security or guarantee that the authentication is guaranteed. So that's the idea of PUF. So the key thing is here a large parameter space, and we usually have input and output pairs, or the challenge and response pairs. And another seminar work, we are inspired by this work. It's called the physical one-way function. It's an old paper published in Science 2002, folks in MIT Media Group. Actually, they came up with the idea about optical PUF using random media, scattering media. So if you shine light, and you'll see speckle pattern, and this speckle pattern is very unique. It's really hard to replicate. And then from this, they can get a key. So it shows some enrollment and verification. So the idea is let's use this more like a physical tag as a PUF. Actually, they did not use the term PUF. So they used the one-way function. But later, people realized that actually this idea is more aligned the PUF in CS. So nowadays, people use the optical PUF as a terminology to describe this more like a hardware security measures. So the first one, this is the idea. So in order to have challenge and response pairs, we use, let's go back to here, fluorescent silk microparticles. So we have 4 different fluorescent silk microparticles. So each side is, as you can see, 100 microns. It's quite big in some sense. And then this mixture of 4 different fluorescent silk microparticles, we just broadcast. Then as you can guess, you're not going to get the same pattern at all because each one is very unique. So that's the idea for PUF. So in this case, because we used 4 different fluorescence microparticles, so the challenge is, as you know, fluorescence, you require the excitation, you need the emission, and we can have different pairs of sets of excitation and emission that serves as more like a challenge. And then based on this, we can look at different particles so that we can have a response. So this is the idea. We can have here 4 different challenges, and then each challenge we have different response, and then from this image, we can extract key. And as you can see, the density of the microparticles is not high, so we have a lot of empty spaces. So if you just convert this to 0 and 1, we have a lot of zeros. So we need to do some biasing. So we ended up doing von Neumann debiasing so that the 0 and 1s are kind of balanced. So and then we got key. And then this one shows basically we generated here up to 30 different tags. And then we just put them together along this vertical line. And because we wanted to make sure the patterns are random, so we decided to use the NIST randomness test. So that's the kind of data we used. So we quantified some of performance. Actually, you need to have uniformity between 0 and 1. Ideally, you want to have 50-50%, right? And then the reproducibility. And then the uniqueness. Actually, each one has to be unique. And the reproducibility is that you have a one tag. If you read multiple times, then you have to get exactly the same key. So we quantify this. And also, we wanted to make sure that the pattern is random, so decided to use the NIST randomness test. So as you know, there are about 15 different statistical tests in the NIST test, but that's designed for random number generation. In that case, you can generate the huge bit streams of random numbers. Then you can use all the statistical tests. But in our case, it's limited by number of tags we can generate and produce in the lab. So we ended up using actually NIST test to require a bit stream of 10 to the 8th bits, quite large to us. So we ended up using only 7 subtests in the NIST test. But the bottom line is that we confirm that the pattern is random. So each tag is random. That means it's quite unique. So we use the NIST test for this. So this is the idea about edible puff. Is again, we borrowed the concept from computer science puff. And another thing is the cyberphysical watermarking. As you know, watermarking, physical watermarking, if you look at your currency, we have a watermark. It's more like a physical printout. And also, in another case is that for digital content, audio, images, video, we have digital watermarking. So the idea is that can we combine this physical watermarking and digital watermarking together? So here, this is, I know it's a little bit busy slide. So the first one is we generate a watermarked image in a computer, basically a combination of host image. Host image is P, and then we wanted to use number 8 as a watermark. So we combine this in digital format, and we use the inkjet printer. It's commonly available printing technology. And then the nice thing is that as an ink, we decided to use food coloring as an ink. So it's all edible. We use the FDA-approved food colorings. You can buy, Payless, etc. And then another thing is we use this fluorescence paper. Instead of using paper, we use the fluorescence print sheet. The idea is that if you print this out on a paper, and if you have a nice scanner, then you can just copy. Very easy to have an attack. So in order to overcome this potential attack, so we actually use the fluorescence printing materials. Again, it's all protein, it's all edible. So if you use the scanner and scan this, then this is fluorescence. So it generates light, very confusing light as a background. So it's not straightforward to copy the exact watermarked image. And then this can be attached to individual pill. And then again, using smartphone, we want to kind of authenticate or extract the embedded watermark so that we can use as authentication. But applications are like, we can have a serialization or track and tracing, and as well as the authentication. But again, we want to do at the dose level authentication. One of the challenges that we had is this. And if you have some understanding about this whole printing process, and also let's say you take the photo of a printed material, we have huge color distortion. So if you have an input from your computer, and then send this to printer, and then you print out, and then if you look at the colors of your printout, actually it's very different from your inputs, because distortion happens. And then the worst case, if you take the photo using your smartphone, your color is different, and depends on the lighting conditions, then depending on the kind of model of smartphone you're using, we will have all different colors. And now that was the big challenge. So in order to overcome this, we decided to actually use some reference colors around the watermark. So we really know the true input of this, and then we want to use this as a reference so that we can correct the watermarked image based on this. So this one shows some of the schemes that we can really recover true color under different the light conditions, different devices, etc. So here we put different watermark images. So P is our host image, and the numbers are kind of a watermark image we want to embed. And so this is the acquired image. And we use the different smartphones. Actually, you can test this if you use different smartphones because they have different RGB sensitivities and etc. And also different lighting condition. You'll have all different photos. And here, using the 32 reference colors, the periphery, we can correct the color of the watermark at the center so that we can extract watermark reliably. So this is the one demonstration that we can use a variety of smartphones and then reliably extract the watermark. And another thing is we tested readout reproducibility. So let's say you have a one tag and we use the different smartphones and make sure that when we repeat here 100 times that we can get exactly the same watermark image we embedded. So we tested this reproducibility, and then let's say we wanted to make sure about our printing reproducibility. So let's say we want to print out the same tag again and again. So here we printed about 50 or 100 on here, and then we tested it actually statistically they're identical. So I think it's due to the just the known technology of inkjet printer, so we can achieve this. So this is the idea of cyberphysical watermarking. And as you can see, each technology has different levels of security and different potential different applications. So I'm going to share a video clip under a simulated setting. It's not a real setting. So I'll just stop. Actually, these are the websites you can report if somehow encounter anti-counterfeit medicine. Actually, one is from FDA, and another one is another kind of association that really facilitate the reporting this. Let me play this again. So this is, again, a simulated setting. So the last technology I just want to share is basically similar to QR code. We can make a QR code. Here, the nice thing is invisible. It's all edible, invisible. In order to increase the parameter space, actually, we used, similar to some of previous studies, we used the 3 different fluorescence proteins so that we can actually have here 3 different colors. And so we used a very rough kind of patterning to get this QR or just matrix code. So we developed a simple, deep learning algorithm so that we can reliably extract the key. So the whole idea, we can still use some of a conventional etch detection and imaging processing, but our manufacturing process in the lab is not really high end. So if you later show that, see that some square patterns is not really perfect. So in order to overcome those, we just use the deep learning just to have a reliable extraction of the key, and then we have a key, and then we decided to use some of hash function. So now we have a hash key through this. So this is the structure. So it's a thin layer, thin film, and then we have here 3 different fluorescence proteins, and also we have a white. So we have each location, we have 4 different colors so that we can have some decent encoding capacity. And then that can be attached to the individual pill. So the reviewer asked, what do you use to glue this? And actually, we use the sugar, glucose-based glue. It's very reliable. So this is the idea. So basically, we can shine different light sources so that we can have different patterns. And the nice thing is everything is invisible from the naked eye. And then we extract the key, and then goes to this hash function, and we can use the hash key. And so we use this for the solid dose medicine, such as tablet and pill. And also, we wanted to do if we can use actually the liquid medicine. And the nice thing about, so let's first demonstrate this. So this tag is attached to a solid tablet, white tablet. So we are shining, we are using embedded LED as a light source. So this is the case, again, under simulated setting. And we really wanted to make sure that we have really good digestibility and also the biocompatibility. Again, we're going to have oral consumption. So we used the 2 different kind of enzymes that are produced in our body. So trypsin is from small intestines, and then pepsin in our stomach. So we use some enzyme solutions to kind of demonstrate that actually degradation happens in 1 hour. So that means actually have a really good support digestibility. And also we really do some biocompatibility. It's called hemolysis, actually using some of blood cells and see if there's any toxic effect when they're exposed to the proteins we're using. And actually there's no toxicity associated. It's kind of straightforward. So again, we're talking about proteins all the time. And then actually the next one is, again, we wanted to do a liquid medicine. And then we realized some of liquid medicine has very high alcohol content, surprisingly. So we decided to use whiskey because they have even higher alcohol content. And our budget was limited. So you can see we cannot really afford high-end whiskeys. So we used 5 different whiskeys, and the alcohol content is really high. So the nice thing about some of the proteins we are using is that due to this crystallization, the shape is maintained in high alcohol solution. So as you can see here, we put this tag over 6 months in these bottles. Doesn't change that much. So that means actually we can put an edible tag into the bottle, and then we can use this as a security tag. So this is through the bottle. Again, we have to image this. So this is the example. We use the Johnny Walker. And again, the tag is inside in the bottle. So we are imaging the tag through the bottle. And actually, we published this article, and then the journal said you need to get a permission from one of the vendors. So we just decided to blur out all the brand names and etc. So let me kind of finish up the talk. So we developed the different types of the technologies, security technologies for pharmaceutical products and medicine. So the one is the optical puff. And then the second one is kind of we revisited the idea about it's called the print camera watermarking technology. And the last one is, again, kind of combining natural proteins and biopolymers. And then idea is, again, we want to encode some information there using the patterns. And then we can have some matrix code similar to a barcode and QR codes. So that's what we have done. Some potential applications. Definitely we can use these for serialization, track and trace, and anti-counterfeit measures, and also we're really interested in on-dose or in-dose authentication. And we see some immediate application in pharmaceutical, hospital pharmacy settings. Again, they have to separate all the pills, and then they have different the single unit or unit dose packages. So we can maybe can help the process using, for example, inkjet printing technologies. And from patients' perspective, we want to see that actually patients, end users, play a big role against combating counterfeit medicines. So hopefully, if we have a really good smartphone readability, then patients can play a role. And definitely, we are not sure exactly, but envisioning there's some other cryptographic and security protocols that it's more like a movie. After you read the information, you have to destroy this right away. One way is just take it, and then we can just remove right away. So if there's any kind of potential applications, just let us know. And as you can see, the pharmaceutical supply chain is really complex, and from a single lab, it's really hard to navigate. And so we are really open to have collaborations and partnerships and etc. And the whole idea about this pharmaceutical anti-counterfeit technology started from a side project in the lab, but we realized it's a really good direction to pursue. So we're actively working on. And I want to thank my lab members and some collaborators, in particular Jung Lim. He really pioneered many different technologies for including optical puff. And I want to thank some of funding opportunities. In particular, I want to thank the U.S. Air Force. So initially, we got funding for hardware security from U.S. Air Force. And then we realized this pharmaceutical, it's a really big domain. So we kind of deviated a little bit from initial kind of proposed idea. And that's why my funding wasn't renewed. But I'm so glad that due to their funding, I got into this domain. And also we identified a really critical the research area of anti-counterfeit pharmaceutical and medicine. So with that, I thank you again for this opportunity. And I'll be around so that we can have more discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim.